Today is kind of a little bit more fun day. So you're estimating fun. We're gonna do general conditions. There we go. So I'm gonna copy and paste my last estimate. Here's my template. This will be vet clinic, general conditions. Okay, so this is kind of one of the last things they teach you, in my experience, as an estimator, you know, actually in the field. The GCs are like kind of at the heart of an estimate for a general contractor. You know, the way I think about it is if you're subcontracting most of your work, right, you get a bid for concrete for $500,000. You pretty much can count, if you did your job as an estimator, at the end of the job, you're gonna spend $500,000 on that subcontract. For electrical, you get a bid for $1 million at the end of the job, I bet it's $1 million to the penny is what you end up spending on it. Those little subcontracts are all kind of self-contained. You kind of, as a general contractor, start to think of it as, like, we're almost passing through this cost, right? Like, I get my price for drywall, I pass it on to the owner, we trade dollars, I really don't have any risk here. So where do you have risk? It's in the general conditions. That's what really drives whether or not you're gonna make your full fee more than any other line item, which is principally based off duration. Get the duration right up front, don't lose time on your schedule, and your GCs are probably gonna hold up, but they do need to be accurate in the first place. So let's start lining those out. So general conditions. And I like to have one master place where I plug in my project duration. And I tie everything else back into that duration. So, you know, if I plug in 7 months for the schedule, and the CEO comes by and says, no, you can do it in 6 months, I'm not having to redo my whole estimate. I can just change it in one spot. And if superintendent comes in and says, no, I need 8 months, the same thing. You're gonna change it in one spot, and it's gonna update the bulk of your estimate. So let's go 7 months for this top level item. And let's list out all our general conditions. So, office setup, office rental, demo, one each, and the rent is going to be equal to your duration. These will mostly be subcontract line items, and we do the yellow. Separate. Setup, let's go $5,000. And then office rental, $1,300 a month. Alright, so that'll cover our office, storage, trailers. This is going to be equal to the duration of the job. Months. And let's say we have 2 C-vans, so duration times 2. Rental on those is going for about $150 a month. Project sign, I have 1 each. day, I'm gonna have, let's see, this is gonna be equal to 2 guys working 8 hours a day for 1 day. That wasn't there. This is equal to 2 guys, 8 hours a day times 1. There. 16 hours and material, $1,000. Buy a decent sign. Project data, let's call it data. So we've switched to Starlink satellites. You'd be surprised how hard it is to get temporary data out to a job site. AT&T really just won't bring it out there if you tell them that it's only gonna be a temporary connection. So Starlink's been great. So let's go, nope, durations. Months. And let's go 200 a month. All right, power. That's going to be equal to your building square footage, so let's plug it in at 4,500 square feet. And 55 cents a square foot. Alright, temporary handrails, 0 linear feet. Actually, let's go. Let's go 50 linear feet. This is equal to our quantity, and again, I'm going to put 2 guys working 8 hours a day for 1 day. Gives me, that is my hours. Something. Sorry, post production rate. And $5 a foot for material. Safety. It's equal to duration. And let's plug in, and I can really, duration, months. Safety really can depend on the job, so let's go 1,500 a month. I always personally, like kind of my little estimator code of ethics, I carry way more money than I need in safety. I never want a superintendent or foreman to feel like, you know, they have to manage a safety budget. Like, if you need something, the money ought to be in the estimate for it on safety. All right, temporary fence. So you're gonna wrap your job site in a temporary fence. Let's go, say, 1,000 linear feet. And the subrate should be temporary fence. Let's go $8 a linear foot. Okay, project survey. One more sum. Okay. $5,000 be plenty. how many you're gonna need, so it's each. And let's see here, this is the way I think we do it. Senior PM gets one, my PM gets one, the coordinator gets one, superintendent gets one, and then one extra one, just be sure I know. So 5 sets, and they should run you around 400 each. Okay, now for the biggest line item of this. This is really where the cost goes. If you're hard bidding a job, this is probably what you'll spend the most time thinking about or making sure you get it right, I should say, because it's really at the core of your competitive advantage is supervision. So that's the bulk of the cost of your job. So what's our staffing plan? So I'm always gonna have every line item shown and then the duration might change. So let's start with seniority. So senior, project manager, coordinator, superintendent, assistant, months. Okay, so depending on the size of the project, if it's a $100 million job, pretty much can guarantee you every single one of those is gonna be the full duration of the job. So you're gonna go, if it's a big job, it's 7 months for every single one of them. If it's a smaller job, you're gonna have a smaller staffing plan. So the rule I've always been taught is if your boots are on the ground, you're charging for the job. So even a senior PM, if he's physically present on that job site for 4 hours for an OAC meeting, he should bill 4 hours to that job, but no more than that. So let's say this guy is gonna be 10% time, so 0.1 times duration. So he's at 0.7 months, so we'll go in and fill in labor rates here in a minute. Project manager, let's put him at 0.15 times duration. Coordinator, 0.33 times duration. Superintendent is equal to duration. And what I like to do is plus 0.5. So duration plus 0.5. So that's adding 2 weeks to whatever we say the schedule is. That's an extra 2 weeks because more than likely your superintendent's gonna show up a week early, start billing to the job and be somewhat present a week before you're really ready for him to start. And he's probably at least gonna be out on that job site a week after the job's over, helping with move-in, just kind of being present. So there's probably at least 2 extra weeks of time that you need to account for. And then assistant superintendent, let's go 0.5 times 50% times duration. And that's even a pretty darn salty crew, but just trying to give you guys some exposure to each one. Okay, I'm gonna copy all this down. Okay, so labor rates, let's go. I have to kind of think this through. So let's say our senior PM makes 150, divide that by 52, and then divide that by 40. 72, is that right? Okay. Plus labor burden. The way we have this run. So that, correct. And then times, say labor burden rate of 1.5. There. Okay, and I'm gonna pull that down. And now all I have to do is adjust the salaries. Let's plug him in at 100. Let's plug him in at 70. Go.
Share the formula for the superintendent.
So the way I'm looking at it is, he has $100,000 a year salary. I divide that by 52 weeks to give me a weekly pay rate. Divide that by 40 hours to give me an hourly rate. And then I multiply that whole thing times 1.5 to cover my labor burden. And labor burden covers things like his vacation time, his sick time, any training money you might set aside for him, any safety money you might set aside for him. If he gets a bonus, that's gonna cover the bonus. Federally mandated taxes, all that goes into a 50% burden. And in my experience, burden typically runs anywhere from, for a GC, anywhere from 40% to 50% is pretty common.
You get a different number.
You get a different number?
Yeah. I got 72.12.
What's his base pay?
100,000.
Okay, so, oh, for superintendent?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm at 72.12.
Oh.
Sorry, I think I was running that math off the senior PM, but, so basically, my senior PM's making 150,000 a year, PM's 100, coordinator's 70, super's 100, assistant super's 70.
So the same formula, just swap out the
Yep. So that's it.
150 for senior project manager.
So that gives me an hourly rate, like, I gotta play with my production hours to make this work. Think about this for a second. This is where having a template already has all this figured out, makes your life easy. Okay, so if he's working 0.7 months, don't follow my work here, I'm just gonna work it out here. So this is equal to 0.7 times 40 times 4.33. So target's 121 hours. So this is equal to 0.7. So I'm projecting that the senior PM would bill 121 hours to the project over the duration of the job at a rate of $108 an hour for $13,000 in labor costs. I'm gonna change this formula. I think it's gonna make my life easier, make y'all's life easier. So I'm gonna change this monthly rate. So I'm gonna strip out that 5 by 12, sorry, but this will make things easier. This is equal to that.
So you just changed it to salary divided by 12 times 1.5.
Yeah, I really like to stay consistent and If I'm figuring everybody by the hour, I wanna figure every single line item by the hour. But that is gonna really be a complicated formula for everybody to work with, so this is gonna be a lot more straightforward. So this guy's making 150, so now I'm just changing out my salaries again. 100,
So can you show all the formulas?
yeah, give me a second here. Okay, that should be a whole lot easier for everybody. So you need formulas for this? So,
That was me, like, where did you get, 121.24?
you can zero all that out. The way I did it, I'm kinda, this is sort of against how I like to estimate. I really do like everything calculating the exact same fashion. And I calculate everything else by the hour, so I hate switching something to a month on labor, but that is gonna be a very convoluted formula for everybody to work with, and this is much more straightforward. How many months times that monthly rate is gonna make everybody's life easier. Okay, so that's your supervision. As you can see, that is the bulk of the cost. Yep. Okay, per diem. Per diem. So if a job is a certain distance from your office, your supervisory staff gets paid a certain amount per day. Probably never had more money in my life than when I was on per diem, in Mountain Home. Getting paid an extra $125 a day, 7 days a week for 2 years. It's stacked up quick. On top of, your salary and how my expenses actually went down. It was great, it was good. Get a per diem job if you can early in your career. So, we're gonna add up how many months of per diem we need, so we're just gonna do sum and add up everybody from assistant superintendent to senior PM. That's months. And this is a separate, and by the way, per diem is tax-free, so it is just pure money.
Go back to that one more time.
So I need to know how many months of per diem I need to include, so it's just the total of all the months of time that are gonna be charged to the job. This is a somewhat simplistic look at it. I mean, your senior PM's probably not gonna be actually spending any time on the job site, like, he's not gonna be spending the night, like, so per diems to cover hotel room, food, if the project is out of town. So if we were to send somebody, say, to Mountain Home, Arkansas, which is like 3 hours from here, they're gonna get paid per diem. And let's go 200 a day. So this is equal to $200 per day times 7 days a week. Well, actually, let's make it 30 days a month. We'll get it done. Go. Temp water, this is equal to the duration. And for material, let's go 300 a month would be plenty. Temporary power. let's make that the square footage of the building, which we call 4,500 square feet at 65 cents a square foot. Portable toilets. It's equal to your duration times how many you think you need, so this is a small job I'm basing this off of. So let's say 2 toilets for the duration. Months. Material, plug in, call it 185. Alright, temporary roads, bane every PM's existence when he's running job costs, because it's always way more than you think. So I'm gonna plug in one lump sum and let's call it 7,500 bucks. So basically, that is the cost of gravel that you're gonna have to bring into the job and dump, that then just gets buried in the mud. But the reality is, if you're trying to work shortly after it rains, every forklift, every backhoe will just bury itself in the ground if you don't have some gravel to spread underneath them. And it just, every time they drive over it, it's gonna sink a little deeper into the mud, and a week later, it's just gonna be gone. But you can either shut down your job for a week every time it rains, or you can pay for gravel. And it'll be a lot.
Why did you do the temporary power on the toilets?
Temporary power, I'm figuring 65 cents a square foot, so I'm basing it off the size of the building and plugging in 65 cents.
It was 4,500 square feet?
Yeah. And then toilets, it's the duration times how many toilets you're gonna need. I'm just gonna say 2 toilets for a small job, never put 1, or it's too much pressure on people to get out. And then temporary toilets at 185 per month for each toilet. Okay, intermediate cleanup. It's equal to the duration. Let's see, let's set that out at 1,500 a month. So that's somebody coming by, sweeping the floors, picking up miscellaneous trash. Okay, final cleanup. Equal to square footage. That has been going out, let's call it 75 cents a square foot. 0.75. There. So that's somebody coming through at the very end of the job, vacuuming all the floors, wiping down all the walls, Windexing the windows, kind of polishing up, whatever stainless steel's in the job, just kind of making the whole thing look good. Alright, dumpsters. And that's by pull, so I'm gonna make that my duration, and I'm gonna say we're gonna pull a dumpster twice a month. And let's go 1,400 dumpster pull. And then finally BIM. That in based off square footage, and put in, say, 25 cents a square foot. Alright, and let's total. $356,000. And let's go ahead and calculate what that costs us per month. Divide that by my duration. That's about right. A little bit on the heavy side because we have so much supervision for such a small job, which probably isn't realistic. But I want y'all to plug something in for each line item. So, I'm running around 50,000 a month. And at a high level, like we've kind of talked about before, that's like a quick benchmark, you know, if it's a small job, medium-sized job, I'd expect to see 50,000 a month. So if I were checking your work, I'd kind of ballpark the duration, say 7 months, times 50,000 a month, he should be somewhere around 350 grand. You're at 356,000, sounds about right to me. I might ask you a few questions after that, but I'm pretty satisfied if you're at that number based on that size of the job.
I missed power, can you? Or did we do it twice? Cause I have a power further up than that, right after data.
Yeah, I must have deleted it. As long as you have it in one of those spots. Okay, so that's it, that's all general conditions. Are there any questions on how to calculate general conditions? So your assignment, I loosely based this off the vet clinic. Your assignment is to use your Aurora drawings, establish your own schedule. You don't have to be detailed, just kind of tell me what you think the correct duration would be. I'm not judging you based off that as long as your general conditions line up to it. But go through and do a detailed GC estimate for Aurora. So you're gonna update your schedule, which will be the main thing that you're gonna do. You know you're gonna have an office mobilization, so that's good. Office rental, that's based off your duration. Storage trailers, same thing. Project signs, same thing. Data, same thing. Temporary handrails, you know, you're probably gonna need some just off that southwest corner of the building, because that foundation wall is like 6 feet high. You really don't want anybody to fall off that. So maybe run some handrails in that area. Safeties, duration, temporary fence, wrap the whole, I always figure construction fence around the complete job site. And if the superintendent uses less, great, but kind of like safety. I never want him to feel constrained to do the safe thing based off my estimate. So I always wrap the whole job in fence. You survey, you're gonna have one, drawings and specs, probably makes sense. I'd like for y'all to kind of figure out your own staffing plan, what you think would be appropriate for Aurora. I'm not really gonna judge you based off what you come up with, but I would like to see you guys kind of put a little bit of thought into what sort of staff you think it would take to run a job like that. Per diem, this is gonna be local. Calculate per diem accordingly. Temporary waters, based off your schedule. Power, you will need to take off the area of the building. 2 toilets, you're gonna have a bit of a line. Nobody likes you if you have a line at the porta-john, so you probably need more than 2. Temporary roads, that won't be enough money. You need to include more for a job that size. Intermediate cleanup. Just based it off schedule would be okay. Update your final cleanup. Dumpsters should be about right, just update your duration, and then update the size of the area of the building for billing. So that's the assignment. Questions?
Can you show how you got the labor totals for the project manager and stuff?
So, he makes, they make, $18,750 a month. But they're only working 0.7 months. So the total labor total is actually less than the monthly rate because he's working less than a month.
Gotcha.
When's this due?
So, we will not have class Monday, I'll send out an email, but we're not gonna have class Monday. Apologies, I will be in front of the school board on the other end of the state, so I can't be here. So, due start of class Wednesday.